My name's Gapu Fifita. I'm 21 years old. I have lived in Utah all of my life, but my family's originally from Tonga. My dad is from the island of Vavahu, and my mom's family's from Matahau. My grandparents, Lisi Ta'alo and Makalesi Alusa, they moved from Tonga to Hawaii to get to Utah. And um, my dad's side, my dad's the only one from his family that moved from Tonga to the U.S.
My name's Alisi Fihaki. I am originally from Salt Lake City, Utah. My family hails from both Tonga and Samoa.
My name is Laura Nayono. My dad is full Samoan, and then my mom is white. My dad, his grandparents and parents both lived in Western Samoa, and then they migrated to California. And then my mom's, her family's from Europe. And yeah.
My name is Namu Samyang. I'm Tongan. Both my parents are from Tonga, but my mom moved to New Zealand when she was little, so I also have family from New Zealand as well.
My name is Vili Falatau. My parents are Isilali Fakato Mafi Falatau and Kathy Falatau. My dad is from Nuku'alofa, Tonga, and his family is from Vavaa'u. And then my mother is from the good old island of Utah.
My full name is Alicia Fa'atene Mokulihuat. I'm now Alicia Fa'atene Mondragon, but I am 22 years old. I've been in the U.S. I'm born and raised in Hawaii, and then I moved up to Utah when I was about 5. And so, my dad is Samoan, Chinese, and Hawaiian, and my mom is Filipino Spanish. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Marley Meredith. My mom is from Lotopa in Western Samoa. Most of my family's from there. I was born in American Samoa, but I've lived like majority of my life in Hawaii, and then I moved to Utah for school.
Okay, my name is Sharon Yu. I'm second generation. I grew up in California, mostly all my family's there. And then my dad's side's from Nuku Nuku and my mom's side's from Hawaii and Mafana.
My full name is Melanesia Iogi Tuyaki. I'm from Riverton, Utah. I'm named after my grandma, whose name comes from Tokomololo, Tonga. And yeah, I was born and raised here.
Hi, I'm Vika Tuyaki. I was born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Hello, my name is Fikitaki Funuokia from Alpha. I'm named after my uncle who's from Ewa. And I'm from Southern California, just moved here last December.
I'm Mickey Wilson Kupa Caetano. I'm being interviewed for this because I have a unique perspective on, I think, Islander culture. I'm white, so you know, if you couldn't tell. But I grew up in a Tongan ward since I was 8, like a LDS ward that's primarily Tongan speakers and Tongan people. And then in 2020, I got a mission call for my church to go serve in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii for 2 years, and I worked primarily with Micronesians, specifically Marshallese. I was called to speak Marshallese, so I speak Marshallese as well.
Is there a stereotypical idea that Western media has kind of portrayed Pacific Islanders? I believe so. There are many different aspects, such as the fob stereotype, fresh off the boat, where they're typically loud, obnoxious, no class. And then you have a few others, such as the athletic type, where they are in their natural habitat, where they are allowed to express their prowess, their strength on the field or in the courts. And then there's one masculinization of women because they hold different standards, different views from what's acceptable in women. Do I think that it's accurate? No. There's so many different ways to portray an Islander, and of course, there are people that are unique to themselves and their characteristics, but culture-wise, no, because sometimes out there, because of what's portrayed in the media and how it's been popularized, those beliefs are kind of internalized by the people because it's been reinforced by people who believe like you have to act a certain way, you have to look a certain way in order to be a Pacific Islander.
It's kind of hard to place, like, I guess, blame on who set these stereotypes. I feel like it could be a Western thing, or it could be Polynesians in the Western thing. Like, I think we've obviously had stereotypes placed on us by others, but we all have also placed stereotypes on ourselves. So I wouldn't necessarily blame just the West for any specific stereotype, good or bad, on us, but there definitely are stereotypes of Polynesians in America, I guess.
Yeah, I do feel very strongly that the West has created a stereotype on Polynesians. For example, like Polynesians have always been stereotyped in the West as being good with athletics or sports, and we don't have a lot of representation in other types of media, but mainly just sports, and yeah.
I think definitely the sports one, like you can't receive higher education without like your athletics, like just not on your merit alone. Then obviously the one about like BMI, like we're on the bigger side, those kind of things. And then what's another one? I would say like that the way that we like interact with each other, a lot of people would say it's like obnoxious. That's a big stereotype, but it's just like our culture to be like loud and in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen like a lot of polys be or fall into that stereotypical like wanting to be a fob. That is just like it's frustrating because it kind of like moves us back a little in terms of like how far we've come like with education as well as like putting our culture out there and like for the newer generations learning it. I feel like that's kind of what they get from it sometimes, and then they just like perpetuate like just being dumb or something and like not being articulate in your words. So I would say that as well as like the stuff that Shar mentioned earlier.
No, and that's a good point because it's like you don't have to compromise your intelligence, like represent your island.
Yeah.
Like if anything, we need you to be like at your best, like because for representation that matters. Like, I don't know, they just be doing weird stuff.
It's not also it's like
you're born here.
Yeah, you don't have to do that to fit in like the poly community.
Yeah.
Like there's also in the poly community there's like stereotypes within that. Like you can be a certain poly, you can be like polys from Cali and polys from Hawaii are different.
Yeah.
And they have their own little niches and stuff like that. But just like in general I would say like the stuff that we touched on is just
It's tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like the most like
prominent.
Yeah, it's super prevalent. And people like even if you don't like feel like you align with those stereotypes or you don't live by them, other polys will label you and make sure that you know what they think about you and what category they place you in. Like, oh my gosh, don't get into like, oh, you're whitewashed, like because I'm educated.
Yeah.
Because I'm educated and I speak clearly. Okay.
I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that everyone has this idea that Polynesians wear skirts and it's kind of like, no, there's more to it.
Yeah, that's true. Like a lot of people, like you'll say you're Polynesian, and everybody thinks the same thing. It's like Hawaii, you know. Everybody thinks it's straight up Hawaii.
Like they'll do a little dance.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you're Polynesian. Yeah, I'm
like,
I am
Polynesian.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think when Moana came out, that's when people really started to, oh my gosh, you're just like Moana.
Yeah,
you're just like Maui. You know what I mean? Or like old people, when you talk to them, they'll be like, oh yeah, I have a son that married a Samoan girl, or I have a daughter that married a Filipino. All right, let's go.
Oh, period.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think it just helps like being surrounded by polys all the time. You know, here in Utah, because you're not really talking about being different. You're all just living.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I think so.
They tend to think that islanders have curly hair, they're loud, also they're kind of bigger as well, with both men and women. And then with representation in the media. They always tie it to like The Rock, or they think of the movie Moana or Hawaii. And I think it just doesn't represent everyone because everybody's different. So
I definitely think there's a stereotype, like stereotypical, like Lilo and Stitch, you know, like we all like are under that stereotype basically. So because there's not a lot of information on us, I feel like the West have created this this image of what they think Polynesians or Pacific Islanders are, and then even just like in our schools, there's not a lot of Polynesian or Pacific Islander representation. So one stereotype for one person might become us all. So, I personally don't feel left out. I think that to an extent it represents us pretty similarly as far as like the athleticism. You know, it is a majority. Maybe it's not all of us that we're all super athletic, but it is a majority. Or like being really good at dancing or singing, and I think that it encapsulates the majority of us. And I feel like I'm a part of that majority, and so I don't feel left out. Therefore, but I think that because it's not a direct representation of everybody, just like anything. But yeah, I personally don't feel left out. I think that it follows suit pretty well. But like I said, not to everybody.
I wasn't that very athletic. I did volleyball, maybe because I was a bit pressured into it. But people would come up to me, non-Pacific Islanders, and say, "Hey, you're not as loud as the others." And I would ask, what do you mean by that? They're like, "Oh, you're not as loud as the other annoying Pacific Islanders." That kind of hurts because one, I'm pretty loud, I think, but in different settings, in different contexts. And two, just that generalization that I'm not like other Pacific Islanders in that sort of way. It's kind of harmful because Pacific Islanders, again, they are unique to their own characteristics, and each individual, they're entitled to how much they want to show off of how much of a Pacific Islander they are.
Yeah. I remember when I was in North Carolina, I was like 14. I was going for this track and field meet, just like for this nationals track and field meet, and we went to Popeyes, and they thought we were Black Chinese. That was pretty funny. That was like the first time we've ever gotten that. But I'd say a lot of people just think we're all from Hawaii, or like we're black. I guess that's really it. It's either we're Hawaiian or like we're African American. I feel like one of like the other stereotypes that people usually see, like especially if they know we're Polynesian, a lot of the times they think we're always like really lazy and that we can't accomplish things and that we're always caring. I guess that's one thing they always say that stands out when they meet our kind.
That's
our ethnicity. Our kind. My parents, I remember when I was a kid, they both worked 2 jobs just so that we're able to have food on the table. It's crazy that I remembered that as a kid, but I'm really glad that I did, just because it gave me more of a purpose and a motivation to work for something for someone.
They kind of like make Samoans and Tongans Pacific Islanders in general, I suppose, but specifically Samoans and Tongans to be like almost like cavemen or like footballer. You know what I mean? Like you're a big guy, or you're a big woman. Like eat a lot. Like that's like the only. I mean, this is because I'm involved in the culture, but from the outside perspective, so I was like, oh, they're so strong. Like they could beat me up. Like I would never fight a Samoan. Like that's all. Anytime I ever hear something about Pacific Islanders, especially on social media, it's always about Samoans. It's always about, oh, like, dude, there's a Samoan bodyguard or something. Like, it's always that they're big and strong. That's like the main thing that you hear. In my case, the Micronesian community, there's no stereotypes of the Micronesian community because no one knows about them. Like, no one does. Did you know what Micronesia was before 2020? I'd heard of the Marshall Islands, but just because you heard of geography, you know what I mean? But there's no cultural ties to that except for island. That's all you know.
I most definitely like. I feel like I do feel left out, kind of, but it's not because of like what other people would say about our race. Most of the time, it's because of what our race is saying about our race. Because there's a like not only are other people stereotyping the Polynesians, but like we're stereotyping ourselves, and we're judging ourselves, like our own friends and family, based on how they act. They would pretty much call me a whitewashed Tongan.
Yeah, growing up, I've never been good in athletics at all, or sports, or anything of that type. So I've always felt left out, and I've never really felt Polynesian because I wasn't good with the Western stereotype of being really athletic. I've never been athletic, and so I've just felt strongly left out. I've never actually felt Polynesian. It's kind of weird. I've never even felt white, but like, it's just, you're in a weird, when you're half Samoan especially, you're always just like, it's hard to fit in with trying to be Polynesian because you have to be either really loud or really strong or good in sports.
I'm going to college without playing sports, so it's like I can pick and choose like what applies to me, but the stereotypes in itself are just so broad. That's why I don't feel like, that's why they're stereotypes, I would say, because they don't apply to everyone.
So we actually come from a family that sings, and it's exactly like, you know, if you don't do something, then you're like you feel less poly or whatever. So like mostly with a lot of like other polys doing stuff like sports and stuff, it was thing.
Yeah, like she said, we came from a different kind of upbringing. Like we grew up where it's predominantly white, and so we just kind of learned to march to the beat of our own drums. Like Sia, she did theater during high
And
school.
other polys do theater, but like not a lot.
Like, yeah, not too many. It was mainly going into sports and all that stuff. But Sia did that part of the performing arts, and I was in the musical aspect. And then we had a little sister named Vina who did the visual arts. Yeah, so we were all pretty much part of the performing arts category. So when people would ask us, "Oh, do you play volleyball?"
Yeah, what sport do you play?
Do you play rugby? No. We play golf.
Play ping pong sometimes.
Yeah.
Play Red Rover.
Yeah, I play tag.
There are, in essence, there are positive qualities, I guess, about certain things that a lot of Polynesian men push, but at the same time, I think it can also be pretty destructive, especially when you're viewing it through the lens of how I think younger Polynesian men have always, like, when growing up, how they always view it, which is like no emotion, because emotion makes you weak, and like mental health doesn't exist, and just like stuff like that, I think is pretty harmful. And so, I've always been, I guess, opposite of how that stereotype is. I've always been very in touch with my emotions, and just a very emotional person in general. I mean, I played football, but I was never really interested in it, and so that always made me sort of an outcast towards people I went to church with, people I went to school with, and so that definitely that has had long lasting effects on me to this day, I think.
Me and my brother were kind of nerds. Just like, oh, I love X-Men. Stuff like that. It's just cool, which is fine and stuff. But like, we're just very nerdy. That's how it is. I've shed that way. I'm not that way anymore. Maybe a little bit. Basically, the point of what I'm trying to get at is, and so that kind of affected it. Like, we weren't, macho masculine men. We didn't have like a man in the household to like be that kind of macho model. Like, sports and stuff was like, I think I would enjoy playing sports now more than I enjoyed playing sports then, and I played more sports then. I don't know. I think that it wasn't like shelter, but it was very much like we had this kind of interest that were like pretty opposite to a lot of the Polynesian kids on the outset. But when you got to know them, you know, especially as we grew older, I feel like we got to know them better. And you also kind of learn more, not obviously about their culture, but like how to interact, like, you know, simple things that a lot of white boys, Polynesians, don't understand, like the dap up, you know, very simple stuff. I've seen that fumbled so many times. And so just simple things like that is automatically like, oh, this kid's a bust, if you don't get it. But since I've had that experience, like for example, since I had that experience all growing up, when it came to be on my mission in Hawaii, and I was surrounded by Tongans and Samoans in my mission, I got along with them very well because I had been accustomed to the point of understanding them and understanding, you know, things that I can relate to with them, and then finding ways that I can draw out of them things that I'm also interested in, right? They just have to trust you. And just like anyone has to trust anybody. But I think that very much, especially recently, especially in the Marxist community, I very much have been fellowshipped in, and I feel like I have like a second home there. I'm never going to claim that that's my culture, but I feel like I'm welcome and accepted, especially since I know so many of people. I throw a name out there like, oh, I know that guy, you know, and boom, you're in, you got it. Does that make sense?
My experiences here as a Pacific Islander has been pretty rough. I'm a first generation. My parents were immigrants coming from the islands, and assimilating to Western culture, it's pretty freaking weird. I grew up with the traditional upbringings, you know, being able to respect your families, your friends, your church, your communities. And like, I don't know, there's just like this whole different sort of aspect to growing up with my family and trying to apply that to outside of my home. Because I know a lot of the stuff that I've learned is not very valued, or it doesn't have that much, it doesn't hold as much value as it does to the rest of society. I know whenever I try to talk about my culture or my identity, people are like, oh, they just assume I'm from Hawaii or I'm like Moana. I was like, I am so much more than a freaking 2D animated character. But yeah, it's just like there's like some points in my life where I feel so inclined to share my culture and my identity, but sometimes it gets hindered when I get compared to something that's a little bit more dehumanizing or romanticized or even sexualized. Like if I'm performing a traditional Tongan dance called a ta'olunga, people would typically see others throwing money as like a form of gratuity, and then to non-PI students, some of them have the gall to tell me that I'm pretty much like a stripper. There are some of those aspects that really do hurt, but I also have to keep in mind that where they lack in knowledge of Pacific Islanders, I can pick that up. I can be the one that to acknowledge, like, hey, we are here, but this is also what we look like and what we do, and how we're not entitled to some sort of just a single thought or stereotype or bias that Western media or just pretty much in general is being portrayed as what they think is Pacific Islander.
To be honest, being a Polynesian in America is like really tough. And it's sad because I really do want to love my culture and feel like I am half Samoan, and I do love my culture, but I've never felt, in America, I've never felt like I was. And so I do feel like Polynesians are stereotyped, and if like you're not the stereotype that Westerners have in their heads, then you're not Polynesian. And my dad, he has, like there have been some times or moments where I have felt he has been experienced racism, and he when you first look at him, it's obvious, you can tell he's a poly. He's dark skinned, he's kind of big, and he's also only graduated with a high school diploma. He hasn't gone to college, and so there's been times where when we're out and we're just talking to other people, I can always kind of tell when they're talking to him, they kind of dumb down their language and kind of talk to him, speak to him as if he's a kid. And it's like, he's not stupid, he's actually really smart. I don't think America does a great job. Like, they do accept Pacific Islanders, but for the most part, it's hard because they always group Pacific Islanders with other races. Like, when you're filling out a form and they ask you what your race is or ethnicity, they always group you with different races like Asian and Asian Pacific Islanders or blacks, but which isn't a bad thing, but it's just like we don't ever get our own, or we don't ever recognize as our own race, like Pacific Islander, Polynesian, we're always grouped with other races.
When my grandparents moved to Hawaii from Samoa for college, they found it hard sometimes that some people were like, felt that they were above them, even though they knew like the same language, they were in the same year of school. And like relating that back to me, it's not as like big as that, but there has been experiences where like people think they're above me because like of the way like I look, simply because of the way I look. Like I won't say anything or do anything and they'll give me like some type of judgment. And even like when I ask for help and stuff, like sometimes like the teachers will get frustrated and then they'll go to a white student and will be asking the same question that I was, and then they'll take their time to explain it thoroughly so that that person understands the concept. And then for some reason when it's my turn, it's just like, ugh, like why are they asking this? Or they get frustrated with me, but I'm like, I'm here to learn. We're in the same place, so I'm like, what's going on?
I feel like the exact way, like in academic settings, like they just expect that you're not doing well, and that's why when they come to you, they're always like, oh, because it's like, oh, how can I help? But I'm like, it's it's a very simple question, like, and it's the same thing. You'll go and take your time there.
Yeah.
That's so annoying. Or like for my grandpa when he came, and my grandpa is like, he's a darker skinned man. Like when he came here, he really didn't speak English that well, and then he was still in high school at this point, because he was getting in trouble back home. And there was like a white family that took him in, but it was more so to take him in to be like, you know, like savior complex. And he would say like, they would always tell him like, yeah, this utensil goes there, like the whole thing. But my grandpa was literally raised by his older sister who was a nun in England, like was in a convent. She's the most traditional woman ever, like, and he had to just play along like, oh, thank you, that's my soup spoon, because like, of course, he needed them like to help him get through high school. I just feel like a lot of times we make compromises, like, and
we'll brush things aside to make them feel better, but it's like you're diminishing yourself by doing it.
And then they're not really even microaggressions, like they're like macro.
Yeah. Macro,
like,
very
that was
macro.
actually just racist. Like, what?
No, you go.
No, yeah. So there have been times where, or there have been times I can think of right now where I've been asked racially charged questions, or like my dad's been, he's racially profiled. Is that yeah, racially profiled, like a bunch of different times or whatever, and I think that's just here in Utah. But you never know. It could be everywhere. It could be anywhere. But going to PWI, we had really weird kids ask us really weird questions a lot. And like it could be, you know, just from a sense of misunderstanding, but like there was one time where I was in my theater class and I got paired up to work with this one kid, and while we were working together he made a lot of comments that made me super uncomfortable, you know, talking about my race. And so I went and I told my teacher, and then she separated us for that project, you know, just because it made me so uncomfortable. But like stuff like that happened often at our school, and that was just like high school, because after you graduate you can choose not to hang out with those kind of people. So I haven't seen it like anywhere after that, but you know it's there.
It's brutal, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people like misrace me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where they kind of like, if they're trying to attack me, it's wrong because they don't know who I am, which is like wrong in the first place. Like you should never do that towards people or try to single them out because of their upbringing and background and the way that they grew up. But I mean, I don't know. I haven't really been seriously racially profiled like that.
Say if I ask Sia, so you play volleyball? There's only two ways that she can answer it. She can look at it the positive way, the negative way. Positive way being like, yeah, I mean, I don't play volleyball. I mean, I'm into the music. That's the music scene. Or the negative way is just like, oh, is it because I'm poly?
Yeah.
Like, isn't poly?
Oh,
That's why.
yeah.
So
You
it's
choose.
really off the character of the person.
I want to make a comment on that because, you know, like on the mission field, like when I was serving my mission in Reno, like a lot of the people that I was, around, they would be like, oh, you have to play rugby or you have to be playing basketball or something. And like for me, it wasn't like, that's not offensive at all. But like sometimes like the other people that I'm with, they would be offended for me.
Mm, yeah.
Sorry, that was
Yeah,
just a spin off of something that you said earlier.
On my orientation day, we were speaking to like one of the student leaders, and then a white woman came up and stood in between my mom and I and the student leader and just started talking to him. But he didn't even think to say like, oh, actually I'm handling this, like can you wait? Yeah. He answered her fully. She walked down the stairs, called my mom, well, can I say it? She called my mom a bitch, and then when we went to go find her in there, so I could go tell an adult, like, this woman just called me a bitch, my mother and I.
Yeah.
And then when we went to go find her, she came up to me, a student, a parent came up to me, a student, yelling in my face, pointing in my face, getting aggressive with me, and did anyone think to be like, what is this mom doing to this student? No. And why did they think to do that? Because she was a blonde white woman, and I'm sitting here just minding my business, and she gets to do that. If it was my mom and her daughter, it would be another situation.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like the campus security, which by the way we all know they don't do their job. Hence those two girls. Rest in peace. But like the campus security came and wanted to escort my mom to her car. Even though my mom wasn't the aggravator, even though she yelled in my face, she's a full-blown adult. And then they asked her and her daughter, like, are you guys okay? Are you guys okay? Asked her if she wanted to file a complaint, not my mom. Like, and that was my first experience here at the U, and it really turned me off from it. I kind of was ready to leave, like, before first semester ended because it kept being, like, this thing of, like, just stares. And then my roommate, too, she would bring all of her friends in. And she was Polynesian. She would bring all her friends in whenever she was in there with me, and they would just watch me, like just observe me in my own space, and look at me like, oh, like kind of like treating me like as if I were bullying her, like when we're alone. And I don't know what she was feeding them or whatever, or what they were told, but it was just like, I just did not have a good first experience at this school. I really wanted to leave like as soon as I came, but now I like it, but it's only because like, look at the people I found.
My experience as a Pacific Islander, I think I've had more positive experiences than negative, but like throughout my life I've always been stereotyped with like my hair or some microaggressions in school, but with my parents. My dad, he has like broken English because he's from the islands, and so often people think he's like more unintelligent than most, so then they talk down to him.
Like it was always like, oh, you guys are the troublemakers. You guys, and they always kept an extra eye on us. And oh, everyone was playing music, but if we turned on our radio, our Bluetooth radio, no, we weren't allowed to have that on. So that was another thing that was kind of a hard experience to witness firsthand, but it's the way of the world, sadly. So yeah, it's crazy.
My experience as a Pacific Islander in America has been pretty great, honestly. I feel like because I was different, like maybe I stood out more. And for some people that might be different because they're different, they stand out more for the wrong reasons. But I feel like I stood out more for the good reasons, as far as like getting to show off my culture, like whether that was in school, dancing in talent shows, and just showing off like our culture, like our dances, our music, being in clubs that I get to be around my fellow Polynesians, like it's awesome. But still being like in America, I've had no problems with it. If anything, I've been able to like build some really great relationships with people because I was Polynesian, if that makes sense. Like they'll say like, oh, you're from Hawaii, like, oh, I went to Hawaii when I was this, when I went here or when I went there, or yeah, they just kind of gravitate towards that. And I feel like I've been able to make some really great relationships and have great experiences with people, you know, just relating to my culture too. And then even meeting like family friends that are also in the US and having to relate to that and not, you know, being in the islands itself. Like, you make some really great relationships and get to experience a lot. So yeah, my experience has been great. And when I was younger in elementary school, like, them called me names because I was dark skinned, you know, something like chocolate or something like that. I think that was something that I experienced when I was in elementary school, and that's something that I vividly remember. Or like, because I'm also Filipino, they all automatically assume I'm Chinese, you know, just because I look a little bit Oriental or ethnic, they assume that it's like either Chinese, and then if I'm Polynesian, oh, I'm Hawaiian. Versus like, I feel like my other friends that weren't necessarily Hawaiian or Tongan or Samoan, they were like prejudged to just by looking at you. Like, even in my workplace today, I'm a nurse, and a lot of my patients ask if I'm Chinese right off the bat. One time I had a patient that said, oh, I'm looking for that Oriental nurse. I was like, oh, well, I think that's me, because there's no other, you know, Polynesians that are working with me or other Polynesian nurses. So something as simple as that, you know, I don't really take it to that extent, and maybe I should, but that's just me personally. I don't really take racist comments or anything like that. Like, I don't internalize it. So therefore, when I think about racist remarks to me, I don't really have any to, you know, reflect on. So racism is definitely not tolerated as much as, you know, back then. Like, my mom, you know, even being in a majority Filipino school, I think that majority back home in Hawaii, more racism was toward the white people. Actually, my dad told me about this day back home in Hawaii that's called Kill Holiday Day. Like, there's a day where Haole people or Caucasian people would not go to school because of the abuse that they would get because of their race. You know, so if anything, back home in their time, racism was towards the white people because of the oppression that they received way back when, you know, when Hawaii first started, you know, becoming a state even, you know, and everything like that. And so a lot of people still feel that oppression, a lot of people still feel that, and I think that racism back home in Hawaii on my mom and my dad's era was more towards other people rather than receiving it themselves. So.
I feel like my experience as a Pacific Islander in America has been pretty okay. Like, nothing too bad has happened. But I think that's just because like 99% of America doesn't know what a Pacific Islander is. Like, most of them don't really know what a Tongan or a Samoan is. They know what Hawaii is, but that's pretty much what they know about Pacific Islanders, I'd say. Or like New Zealand or Australia. But yeah, I feel like there were a lot of times in my life where like racism was like insane, like pretty huge thing. Most of it was just from sports. Like, I'm sure it's like heat of the moment stuff when they're saying those things, but like there's sometimes like after the games where it's not just the players but the players' parents would come at us, and it's kind of upsetting. Sometimes, other times, like, well, I guess it's just upsetting in general. I wouldn't say other times. It's not really okay.
So you're okay with racism sometimes? Nah, I'm playing, of course. We'll cut that.
It's not making the fun. No! No! Uber for reals.
Oh, okay.
I don't have friends. I got family.
And the question of Pacific Islanders being portrayed in media today, I think part of it does sometimes correlate with what's really happening within the culture, peoples, or islands. But sometimes I feel like they cherry pick, especially when it comes to like commodification or just making some sort of like monetized paywall behind it all. Especially we see it in tourism, where when people think of Hawaii or Fiji, they think, oh, it's just a vacation spot, it's just paradise. But thinking about it, those peoples, the indigenous peoples to those islands, that's their home. And it's not sunshines, rainbows, like what everyone else thinks it is. They have their own set of difficulties that they go through. And I feel like if there are times where it is portrayed accurately, it does in favor of like whether if it's sports, Christianity, religion, like cherry picking representations of like what's acceptable in the Western eyes. I do believe that there are a few media outlets that do a good job of portraying the culture and the life of Pacific Islanders. I know Coconut TV, COCONET.TV. They do a series of documentaries, TV series, and just like little clips of like to give you insight of histories of the Pacific, cultural practices, traditions, and just giving more insight beyond the paradise that people kind of think about when they think about the Pacific. I do not believe that Hollywood does give enough opportunities to Pacific Islanders besides icons such as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Like I said, I think like a lot of what Hollywood does is cherry pick certain traits, certain things that they want to portray in the movies in order to give it depth. I know if they are giving credit or at least acknowledging that they're going to use lands from, I know Hawaii is a hotspot for most of that like background footage, but I feel like if they are capable of doing that, they can do that for Pacific Islanders, giving them opportunities to like kind of showcase themselves and give more depth, personalities, characteristics of not only themselves but their culture.
As far as I'm aware, there's zero representation for Micronesian peoples in any media. Period. Like I mean, maybe there's some representation for Fijians, but they're not even Micronesian, they're Melanesian. You know what I mean? And so there's like no representation for any Micronesians ever, which kind of sucks. You never see them on screen, you never see them represented on screen. I think it's felt. Because it's just such a small community. Like, there's a total, like Marshallese people total is like, I don't even know, not even 1 million people, maybe 1 million. Maybe, definitely not more than that. And that's just such a small percentage of people compared to the whole world at large. It's still significant, it still shouldn't be forgotten, but it's so niche that I don't think that it's going to change. I mean, even Pacific Islanders are very niche, there's not a lot of them, but at least, you know, obviously you have Hawaii, which is a part of the United States, which obviously helps that culture be shared. And also, you know, Polynesians cover a lot of Pacific Island. You just never think or hear about Micronesians because they're called Micronesian for a reason. Micro means small island. They're just so small and just like very much, if at all recognized, always swallowed up or overshadowed by other Polynesians.
I'm hearing from one source that it's really about who you know in the film industry, whoever's in, that can get you in. But if you're asking me if it's like you feel like it's harder for Polynesians to get in, or they're into the film industry, then my answer to that is like, I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't know. Like, for real. Actually, when Moana came out,
I thought it was a pretty
It's okay.
good conglomeration.
I feel like some people will take it out of the ones that are really like, I don't like call them woke.
Or like pick me.
Woke people. Like they're the ones that make it like take it out of context. But like the idea that they made a movie about our people and like they're mainstreaming it, I think that's good enough. Like their intentions were like, if they did misrepresent it, their intentions were not like that. It was more so that like to get our people out there. Like there's Polynesians out there that like a lot of cultures that don't know about us, now they know about us because they know it. So I look at it like I look at it as a positive aspect.
Yeah.
Like these like they they cared enough to make a film or an animation film, especially Disney, to represent our culture. So I think there was no misrepresentation. It was perfect. Like, it's good. I'll tell you this. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
I agree. Yeah. No, I was gonna mention like the fact that like if there isn't any representation, you know, in like film, then it's always in sports. And like I'm always seeing Polynesians like in sports and everything. So like I'm like, for me, I'm just like, it's whatever, because there's enough of us there where it's like, you know, let me just stop right there.
They just do what's easier and then the minimal amount of research, I feel like.
Yeah.
But that's how I feel in like TV shows and movies. I don't care for fighting for representation in the media, accurate or otherwise. I care about representation in like places of actual power who can make a difference. So I don't really mind much that they don't represent us correctly. I just feel like don't do it at all then.
Yeah.
I would also say too, like, I also don't think that we're represented correctly in the media. Like how Shar said about stereotypes, even like through social media, people make videos or like jokes about being fob, and then that's what you see. And then also like in movies, there's this one example, I think it was like the Fast and Furious franchise, the one that of course The Rock was in, and like they went back to Samoa and met his mom. Okay, I was so excited like that they showed that, but they also did not even record that over there. They recorded it in Hawaii. And then when the mom came out, she started talking. It was just straight fob accent, and she was like saying like, "You guys need to love each other," like that type of stuff. And I was just like,
it's embarrassing.
It's like we don't talk like that. My grandma doesn't talk like that. My great grandma doesn't talk like that. Like they speak fluent and they talk good English. Like.
And that's why it's so rude to older generations, because imagine coming here, they work their butt off to assimilate into white culture, because that's what this is. That's what Western culture is, like Eurocentric culture. And like when they represent us like that in the media, it's almost like a slap in the face. You know how hard it was for my grandma to learn English?
It is, and she wasn't even that old in the film, so I'm like, why are you talking like that? And also like The Rock, like how you're saying, the people who do have power in those situations. There was like another scene too where like they just, Roman Reigns was in there and they started doing the haka and there's like cars flying. Like that type of stuff, it's like you're trying to show our culture, but it's like,
you're making a mockery.
Does the setting make sense? Yeah. Is it properly like educating people on what we do? It's kind of just like we look like savages just throwing around stuff.
That's what it is.
Yelling, sticking our tongue out. But it's like those type of stuff are traditional. They have traditional meanings behind it. So just to perpetuate it in that sense is just disrespectful, I would say.
Yeah, like they like actually just relegated us to second-class citizens, or not even that, but just like barbaric, which is like what all the people who came, like missionaries and whatever, came and thought of like our culture in the first place. It's just so backwards.
Personally, I haven't seen any form of media that properly portrays Polynesians. A lot of people say Moana does, but for me it didn't really feel like Polynesian culture. It just felt more, again, westernized, whitewashed, Americanized. Also, the only form of media I can think of is WWE, where Polynesians have been represented, and still it doesn't properly show Polynesians accurately. It depicts them as being very loud, again, aggressive and tough, and it's just, that's not all what Polynesian culture is. A lot of it's about family and taking care of like our parents, and I just haven't seen anything like that. I feel like Polynesians just kind of have to accept that in America especially, that we're never going to fully be represented in Western media at all. And I was just thinking about this the other day, and I've talked with my other poly friends, and it's just kind of got to the point where it's sad, it's a sad truth, but it's what I feel, and like I've talked with my dad about it too, and we don't fully ever feel like our culture's being shown to the world. And we want to show our culture because we love it, we love our family and we're caring, but you don't ever get to see that. You always just see like, oh, us being tough in Hollywood, like Dwayne Johnson, and it's just sad, but yeah.
Yes, we're all talking about hopes and Sean. that there definitely still is very strange stereotypes placed on Polynesians in TVs and movies specifically, but like, you know, any type of media here. For example, Hobbs and Shaw. We just love The Rock, don't we? He's, I think he definitely rides. This is off topic, but he definitely rides these being Samoan train a little too hard, and I don't know. A lot of his stuff seems kind of tone deaf, and so I think that's kind of how Hobbs and Shaw came off to me. Was like Polynesians don't live in grass huts. Still, we don't live in the ground. We're not fighting for survival. Like, you know, it's normal. It's like, you know, they have cars, they have stores, they have boats. They have. It's normal over there. Obviously, it's not as advanced as you know, certain other countries, but we're not like, you know, ugu gaga around the island with our, you know. So I think when I was watching Hobbs and Shaw and they first went and they, you know, showed the scene specifically where he went to Samoa, that was just kind of it was cringe. It was cringe for me to watch, and it was also just kind of sad that it was like, why, coming from another Polynesian man, I don't understand why we're representing it that way.
So you mean to tell me that you're not doing the haka with cars flying behind you?
I can't say that I am, but you know, maybe The Rock is daily. Maybe that's why he's so aggressive.
I think with TV and movies like The Rock, I think he adds to stereotypes, but with the stereotypes he adds to, with Moana, they made Maui look like really big and have curly hair. And I think that just makes everyone think all islanders look like that, especially the men. And it just raises more stereotypes against islanders, which is sad because he's an islander himself. So it's just, yeah. Besides The Rock, all I know is Taika Waititi, and he's with Marvel. But I know he's trying to make movies with islanders, but I also think it's kind of like, it mixes together because I know he's trying to help, but I think he's like The Rock where he just creates more stereotypes. And with Hollywood, I don't think they give enough representation for islanders because they don't really make any roles for islanders, or they're looking for like a specific look that islanders apparently don't have.
And like when I see a good movie or see a good TV show that represented, I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Like my family's like that, or you know, my parents are like that. But I don't think it happens very much for the most part. I don't think there's a lot out there as far as like Polynesian representation. I think that lately a lot of things on social media has been catching my eye, like videos that people are making that are like, oh, if you're Polynesian, you're like this, and you just relate to it. Or I hear a lot of podcasts lately where they talk about their experiences. I really like that sort of media where they're able to share their experiences and everybody's allowed to touch on that.
Who will survive in America? Who will survive in America? Who will survive in America? Who will survive in America?
I was living in Hawaii for 2 years because I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so I served my LDS mission in Hawaii. And throughout those 2 years, I'd seen the relationship between like the Hawaiians and the US aren't very good at all. I honestly don't know how to feel about it. I think I need to look into it a lot more. I honestly don't think that, well, I think there could be a chance that they make amends. It's just, I think being around the Hawaiian people for that time that I had over there, it might take a long time.
I don't think that America will ever fully apologize on the actions they've done to Polynesians or even fully accept the responsibility that they did do, that they had a role in it. Especially with the annexation of Hawaii, it was very, how they took it over from the Queen, it was very sad. And it's just, I don't think, every time I bring it up or something or think about it, I always realize that America will never fully accept that, yeah, we don't fully actually own Hawaii. And I don't think they ever will fully apologize either, because they've always just kind of brushed Polynesian politics under the rug and what happened, and it's sad.
But at the end of the day, the situation at hand is like, it's pretty cut and dry. It's like you took land from people and are just like have slowly washed them out, taken, just like bit by bit, they've taken land. Just the amount of things that have happened over the past years in Hawaii is just, it's really heartbreaking.
I think that in terms of the United States apologizing to the Hawaiian Islands or like the Marshall Islands for wrong things that were done in the past, I think that an official apology probably won't ever happen. That's just my own opinion. I think that if an apology was to be given, it should have been done by now. You know what I mean? Like, if they were going to apologize, the last 20 years, even just with how much awareness has been brought to it, would have been done. An apology would have been given.
In the 50s and 60s, Bikini Atoll, which is the beginning of the SpongeBob episode, was bombed by the United States to test atomic bombs. And that has massively hindered the people, has given people I personally know cancers. And basically, yeah, the United States screwed them, like they screwed a lot of people. And the United States, in, I guess, requiem for that, apology for that, they have an arrangement where Marshallese people can come to the United States without a green card. They can come whenever they want. So it's not Marshall Islands is not a territory of the United States, but they're definitely I want to say puppet state, as the United States largely controls what goes on there, even though that they're technically their own governing body. And so that's good, I guess, that the Marshallese people can come over here as they please. But they're coming to, especially Hawaii, prices that are insane. Marshallese people there's only like 2 stores in all of the Marshall Islands. Like, besides the American Navy base over there, there's only like 2 stores, because they always fish and catch their food and grow their own food, and they trade among the people. So they're very much a hunter-gatherer kind of society still. And so when they come over here, especially to Hawaii where I live with them, it was very much hard for them to keep up because of the prices over there, and just they're not used to having to do that, pay that kind of thing, right? And that is obviously leading to bigger health issues. Like, a lot of the Marshallese people are very unhealthy, very obese, very diabetic, have gout, all those issues, because they come over here and they just don't have good access to food. Over there, they're always eating rice and chicken and fish. Over here, what can they afford? They can afford cheap foods. And so it's definitely very sad. If you only focus on the negatives of the community, there's a lot of negative there. Overwhelmingly so, I would say. But miraculously, it hasn't seemed to hinder the spirits of the Marshallese people. I do hope for more awareness about Marshallese. I don't think it'll happen, because there's a lot of Marshallese kids. The Marshallese population will never go away. Each household had like 20 kids. There's going to be more Marshallese than white people at one point. But I think that aspects of the culture is getting washed out because of the westernization of them, which is kind of sad. But I think that there's an effort to keep it alive, to keep the language alive, to keep the dances and those things alive, especially in Hawaii, where Marshallese very much conglomerate and stick together. And I hope that continues, and I hope to be able to support that wherever I can, because despite the horrible hardships that the Marshallese people have gone through, they still have such a humble heart, so welcoming, so kind. Really just being amongst them and seeing the conditions that they were in, and seeing how they treated us, welcomed us like literal family, would call us honorary Marshallese people. It's changed my life, and I'll never forget that. And if I was to make it big one day, become rich someday, there's undeniable to me that I would do all I can to serve them back, which sounds weird, right? Because I was called on a mission to serve them the gospel, which I tried to do, but overwhelmingly they served me with showing me a way to live, a way to accept people that it is nothing less than priceless. And it's something I'll always be indebted to them for, and I'll never forget. I'll be grateful for, the times that I spent there.
I guess I've been pretty blessed to be a Polynesian. I think being able to grow up going through these things, whether it's like stereotypes or like racism or like anything like that, I think it's definitely helped me grow.
I guess more of just advice or a message to my fellow Polynesians. It's okay to be different. We're getting there. Yeah.
Ijan Herman, Utah. Ijun Lukun Eman.
A couple of things I do want to leave off of is the question of authenticity, because no matter where you're from, you still have that piece of you. I've been titled an islander, born away from the islands, who has no sort of knowledge of what life is like there. But although disheartening, you also have to find your ways of being able to express your authenticity. There's no such thing as plastic. If you are Tongan, if you're Samoan, if you're any of the Pacific Islander heritages, be proud. Like, don't let anyone dishearten or kind of tell you anything that makes you so dissonant from your identity and your heritage that it kind of breaks you. And yeah, everyone has potential, but you can definitely be more. So be more, be proud of yourself.
I am going to the island of the valley, to Lahaina, where the mountains are green. You will find me in Lahaina.